My wife said, "I wouldn't have had the affair if you had been emotionally available. You neglected me for years, so I found someone who actually cared about my feelings." I pulled out my phone and showed her the 847 text messages I'd sent over 6 months trying to reconnect with her. "Which part of this looks like neglect to you?" She went silent. 2 weeks later, her affair partner dumped her when his wife found out. I'm a 32-year-old accountant, and until 4 months ago, I thought I had a solid marriage. My wife Jennifer and I had been together for 7 years, married for 5. We own a nice house in a quiet neighborhood, both have stable careers, and seem to be building the kind of life we'd always talked about wanting. I worked as a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm while Jennifer managed social media for a local marketing company. Our relationship had always been built on communication and mutual respect. We talked through problems instead of letting them fester, made major decisions together, and supported each other's career goals. Jennifer was pursuing her master's degree in communications while working full-time, and had taken on extra household responsibilities to give her time to study. I thought we were a strong team navigating life's challenges together. The first signs of trouble started appearing around October last year. Jennifer began working later hours at her job, claiming her company was expanding their social media services and needed her to manage additional client accounts. She'd come home exhausted and stressed, barely speaking during dinner before disappearing into our home office to work on her graduate coursework. I tried to be understanding about her increased workload and academic pressure. I took over most of the cooking, cleaning, and household management so she could focus on her responsibilities. When she seemed overwhelmed, I'd suggest we take breaks together, maybe watch a movie, go for a walk, or just talk about how she was feeling. But Jennifer increasingly brushed off these offers, saying she had too much work to do. By November, Jennifer's behavior had changed dramatically. She was distant during conversations, checking her phone constantly, and seemed irritated whenever I tried to engage with her about anything beyond basic logistics. When I asked about her day, she'd give one-word answers. When I suggested date nights or weekend activities, she'd claim she was too busy or tired. I started keeping track of my attempts to connect with Jennifer because I was getting concerned about our relationship. I'd send her good morning texts, ask about her meetings, share articles I thought she'd find interesting, and suggest activities we could do together. Most of these messages went unanswered or received brief, dismissive responses. In December, I planned a surprise weekend getaway for us to reconnect. I booked a cabin at a lake we'd visited during our honeymoon, arranged for time off work, and even coordinated with Jennifer's boss to make sure she could take Friday off. When I told Jennifer about the surprise, she seemed annoyed rather than excited and said she couldn't possibly take time away from her projects. That's when I realized something was seriously wrong with our marriage. The Jennifer I'd married would have been thrilled by a romantic gesture like that. She'd always valued quality time together and had often complained in the past when work got in the way of our relationship. Her complete lack of interest in reconnecting was completely out of character. I suggested we start couples counseling to work through whatever was causing the distance between us. Jennifer immediately got defensive and said our problems weren't serious enough for therapy. She claimed I was overreacting to normal relationship fluctuations and that things would improve once she finished her degree and work stress decreased. But things only got worse. Jennifer started staying out late several nights a week, claiming she was studying at the library or meeting with classmates for group projects. She'd come home after I'd gone to bed and leave for work before I woke up. We were living like roommates who happened to share a house. I continued trying to bridge the gap between us. I left love notes in her lunch bag, brought her favorite coffee when she was studying, and sent thoughtful text messages throughout the day. I researched her interests and found events I thought she'd enjoy. I suggested we take a cooking class together, something she'd mentioned wanting to try years earlier. Jennifer's responses to my efforts ranged from indifferent to hostile. She'd throw away the notes without reading them, ignore the coffee until it got cold, and respond to my texts with single words or not at all. When I brought up specific concerns about our relationship, she'd accuse me of being needy and clingy. The breaking point came in February when I found evidence that Jennifer was having an affair. She'd left her laptop open and I saw text messages from someone named Ryan that were clearly romantic in nature. The messages went back months and included explicit photos, detailed discussions about their feelings for each other, and plans for secret meetings. I was devastated but not entirely surprised. Jennifer's behavior over the past few months suddenly made perfect sense. The late nights, the emotional distance, the irritation when I tried to connect with her, she'd been having an affair and resenting me for interfering with her ability to focus on her new relationship. I confronted Jennifer that evening with printed copies of the messages I'd found. Instead of showing remorse or taking responsibility for her choices, Jennifer immediately went on the attack. She said I'd violated her privacy by looking at her computer and that I had no right to spy on her personal communications. When I pointed out that the messages proved she'd been cheating on me for months, Jennifer's response floored me. "I wouldn't have had the affair if you had been emotionally available," she said. "You neglected me for years, so I found someone who actually cared about my feelings and made me feel valued as a person." I stared at her in complete disbelief. "Jennifer, I've been trying to reconnect with you for months. You're the one who's been pushing me away and refusing to engage with our relationship." She insisted that I'd been emotionally distant long before her affair began and that she'd felt lonely and unappreciated in our marriage for years. According to Jennifer, my attempts to connect with her were too little, too late, and didn't make up for the damage I'd already done to our relationship. That's when I pulled out my phone and showed Jennifer the evidence I'd been collecting of my attempts to reach out to her. I'd saved every text message, email, and photo of notes I'd left for her over the past 6 months. The total came to 847 documented attempts to connect with her emotionally and physically. Which part of this looks like neglect to you? I asked, scrolling through months of unanswered messages and ignored gestures. Jennifer went completely silent as she looked at the overwhelming evidence that I'd been desperately trying to save our marriage while she was building a relationship with someone else. She couldn't argue with the documented proof that her claims of emotional neglect were completely false. After several minutes of uncomfortable silence, Jennifer finally said she needed time to think about everything. She went to stay with her sister that night, leaving me alone in our house to process the fact that my wife had been lying to me for months and was now trying to blame me for her decision to have an affair. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since I confronted Jennifer about her affair and showed her the evidence of my attempts to reconnect with our marriage. She's been staying with her sister Lisa while we figure out what happens next, though she's been texting me daily asking if we can work things out. Jennifer's tune has changed significantly since our confrontation. She's no longer claiming that I neglected her emotionally or that her affair was justified by problems in our marriage. Instead, she's now saying she made a terrible mistake and wants to do whatever it takes to rebuild our relationship. According to her latest messages, Jennifer has ended things with Ryan and wants to start couples counseling immediately. She says she realizes now that she was looking for problems in our marriage to justify her attraction to someone else, and that she's ready to take full responsibility for the damage she's caused. But I'm having a hard time believing anything Jennifer says at this point. For months, she convinced me that I was the problem in our relationship while secretly carrying on an affair. She made me feel like I wasn't trying hard enough to connect with her when the real issue was that she was emotionally invested in someone else. The worst part is realizing how much I blamed myself for our problems. I'd been working overtime trying to figure out what I was doing wrong and how I could be a better husband. I'd researched relationship advice, bought books about improving communication, and even considered individual therapy to work on my own emotional availability. All that time, Jennifer was getting her emotional and physical needs met by Ryan while letting me twist myself into knots trying to save a marriage she'd already checked out of. The gaslighting was so effective that I actually started believing I was emotionally neglectful despite all evidence to the contrary. My family and friends have been incredibly supportive since I told them what happened. My brother Mike was furious when I showed him the text messages I'd saved and Jennifer's claims that I'd neglected her. He pointed out that I'd been talking about my concerns about Jennifer's distance for months and had clearly been trying everything I could think of to reconnect with her. My best friend Tom said he'd noticed that Jennifer seemed different when we all hung out together over the past few months. She'd been checking her phone constantly, seemed distracted during conversations, and hadn't been engaging with our friend group the way she used to. Now he realizes she was probably texting with Ryan during our social gatherings. The most eye-opening conversation was with Jennifer's sister Lisa, who called me yesterday to apologize for her sister's behavior. Lisa said Jennifer had confided in her about Ryan back in November but had claimed that I wasn't paying attention to her emotional needs and that she felt justified in seeking connection elsewhere. Lisa said she'd been uncomfortable with Jennifer's justifications but had tried to be supportive as her sister. Now that she'd seen the evidence of my attempts to save our marriage, she realized Jennifer had been lying to her as well as to me about the state of our relationship. "David, I watched you try so hard to make Jennifer happy over the past few months," Lisa told me. "You were constantly suggesting date nights, bringing her little gifts, asking about her day. I actually told her she was lucky to have someone who cared so much about her feelings. I had no idea she was telling you that you weren't doing enough." Lisa also revealed some concerning information about Ryan. Apparently, he's married with 2 young children and has a history of having affairs with coworkers. Jennifer wasn't his first extramarital relationship, and Lisa doubted she'd be his last. She said Jennifer seemed to think Ryan was going to leave his wife for her, but Lisa suspected he was just looking for excitement outside his marriage. "I've been meeting with a therapist individually to process everything that's happened. Dr. Sarah Martinez has been helping me understand that Jennifer's affair and her attempts to blame me for it are classic patterns in unfaithful relationships. People who cheat often rewrite the history of their marriage to justify their choices and make their spouse seem like the real problem." Dr. Martinez said the fact that I documented my attempts to connect with Jennifer was actually really smart, even though I did it out of concern rather than suspicion. It's given me concrete evidence that Jennifer's claims of neglect were false and has prevented me from accepting blame for her choices. I'm still not sure what I want to do about our marriage. Part of me loves Jennifer and wants to believe she's genuinely remorseful about her affair. But another part of me can't get past the fact that she spent months gaslighting me and making me feel like I was failing as a husband while she was betraying our marriage vows. Update 2. 3 weeks after confronting Jennifer about her affair, I received some interesting information that shed new light on her relationship with Ryan and her claims about our marriage. Jennifer's coworker Amanda reached out to me through social media because she felt I deserved to know the truth about what had been happening at Jennifer's workplace. Amanda said she'd been uncomfortable watching Jennifer's affair unfold but hadn't felt it was her place to interfere in other people's relationships. According to Amanda, Jennifer and Ryan's relationship had been common knowledge at their office for months. They'd been taking long lunch breaks together, staying late to work on projects that didn't require both of them, and were clearly involved in a romantic relationship that went far beyond professional collaboration. What was most disturbing was Amanda's account of how Jennifer talked about me at work. Rather than expressing guilt or conflict about her affair, Jennifer had apparently been painting me as an emotionally distant husband who didn't appreciate her or meet her needs. She'd told coworkers that our marriage had been struggling for years and that I was too focused on work to pay attention to her. Amanda said Jennifer's descriptions of me were so negative that several coworkers had suggested she should consider divorce rather than staying in an unhappy marriage. Jennifer had apparently said she was working up the courage to leave me but wanted to be sure about her feelings for Ryan first. "I was shocked when I met you at the company holiday party in December," Amanda told me. "You were nothing like the inattentive, selfish husband Jennifer had described. You were so sweet to her and clearly adored her. It made me realize she'd been lying to all of us about your relationship." Amanda also revealed that Ryan had never given Jennifer any indication that he planned to leave his wife. He'd been very clear that their relationship was purely physical and that he wasn't looking to change his family situation. Jennifer had apparently convinced herself that their connection was deeper than it actually was and that he'd eventually choose her over his wife. The most devastating piece of information was that Jennifer had been planning to ask me for a divorce as soon as she finished her master's degree in May. She'd apparently been using our marriage as financial and emotional stability while she figured out her next steps, with no intention of actually working on our relationship. This explained why Jennifer had been so resistant to couples counseling and had seemed annoyed by my attempts to reconnect with her. She didn't want to improve our marriage because she was already planning to end it. My efforts to save our relationship were interfering with her exit strategy. Armed with this new information, I decided to take control of the situation rather than waiting for Jennifer to decide what she wanted to do. I consulted with a divorce attorney and began the process of protecting my financial interests and documenting Jennifer's adultery for the proceedings. When I told Jennifer I was filing for divorce, she was shocked and begged me to reconsider. She said she'd made terrible mistakes but that she was committed to rebuilding our marriage and had already started individual therapy to work on her issues. She promised she'd do whatever it took to regain my trust and prove her commitment to our relationship. But I'd learned too much about her real intentions and her pattern of deception to believe her promises. Jennifer hadn't just had an affair, she'd systematically lied to me, her family, her coworkers, and probably herself about the state of our marriage and her reasons for seeking a relationship with someone else. I told Jennifer that I might have been willing to work on our marriage if she'd taken responsibility for her choices and been honest about her motivations. But discovering that she'd been planning to leave me anyway and had been using our marriage for convenience while building a relationship with someone else was too much to overcome. Jennifer became increasingly desperate as she realized I was serious about ending our marriage. She offered to quit her job, transfer schools, move to a different city, anything to prove she was committed to starting over with me. But these offers felt manipulative rather than genuine, like she was trying to find the right combination of promises to change my mind. The turning point came when I realized that I no longer trusted anything Jennifer said. She'd proven herself capable of lying convincingly for months while maintaining a facade of being a loving wife. Even if she was genuinely remorseful now, I'd never be able to believe her again when she said she loved me or was happy in our relationship. Update 3. 1 month after filing for divorce, Jennifer's situation with Ryan came to a dramatic conclusion that validated everything I'd suspected about their relationship. Ryan's wife discovered their affair when she found text messages on his phone during a family vacation. According to mutual friends at Jennifer's workplace, Ryan's wife confronted him immediately and threatened to expose the affair to his employer and both their families if he didn't end it immediately. Ryan apparently panicked and called Jennifer to tell her their relationship was over. He said he couldn't risk losing his family and his job for what had become too complicated and risky. He asked Jennifer not to contact him again and said he needed to focus on repairing his marriage. Jennifer was devastated by Ryan's abandonment and finally understood that he'd never been as invested in their relationship as she'd believed. All his talk about their special connection and deep understanding had been manipulation designed to keep her available for an affair he'd never intended to take seriously. She called me crying and begging me to reconsider the divorce. She said losing Ryan had made her realize how much she'd thrown away and that I was the only person who'd ever truly loved her. She promised she'd spend the rest of her life making up for her mistakes if I'd give her another chance. But I felt nothing but pity for Jennifer at that point. She'd destroyed our marriage for a man who'd discarded her the moment their affair became inconvenient for him. She'd lost both her husband and her affair partner within a matter of weeks and was now facing the consequences of her choices alone. What struck me most was that Jennifer still didn't seem to understand that the problem wasn't just her affair, but her willingness to lie and manipulate me for months while planning to leave our marriage. Even if Ryan had chosen her over his wife, I would never have been able to trust her again after discovering how easily she could deceive me. The divorce proceedings moved forward quickly since Jennifer didn't contest anything. She was dealing with the fallout from her affair at work, where her relationship with Ryan had created an uncomfortable atmosphere and led to questions about her professionalism. Several coworkers who'd previously been friendly with her had distanced themselves after learning about her deception. Jennifer also had to face her family's disappointment when the truth about our divorce came out. Her parents had always liked me and were shocked to learn that Jennifer had thrown away our marriage for an affair with a married man. Her sister Lisa was particularly upset because Jennifer had lied to her about the reasons for our marital problems. Meanwhile, I'd been focusing on rebuilding my life and rediscovering who I was outside of my marriage. I'd started exercising regularly, reconnected with friends I'd neglected, and even began dating someone new. Karen was a teacher I'd met through a hiking group, and she was refreshingly honest and straightforward about her feelings and intentions. What I appreciated most about Karen was that she communicated directly about any concerns or needs in our relationship. If she felt like we weren't spending enough quality time together, she'd say so rather than becoming distant and expecting me to figure out what was wrong. It was a stark contrast to Jennifer's passive-aggressive approach to relationship problems. The difference in communication styles made me realize how much energy I'd been spending trying to decode Jennifer's moods and behaviors. I'd been constantly analyzing her reactions and trying to anticipate her needs because she'd never been direct about what she wanted from me or our relationship. Update 4. 6 months after discovering Jennifer's affair and filing for divorce, our marriage was officially dissolved and I was finally free to move forward with my life completely. The final hearing was anticlimactic since Jennifer had agreed to all the terms I'd proposed. We split our assets evenly, she kept her car and personal belongings, and I kept the house since I could afford the mortgage payments on my own. There was no alimony since we'd both been working throughout our marriage and the divorce was due to her adultery. Jennifer looked miserable during the hearing and made one last attempt to apologize for destroying our marriage. She said she'd been seeing a therapist and had realized how much damage her affair and lies had caused. She acknowledged that I'd been a good husband and that her claims of emotional neglect had been false justifications for her poor choices. I accepted her apology but made it clear that I'd moved on and didn't harbor any anger toward her anymore. The divorce had given me closure and allowed me to understand that Jennifer's affair was about her own issues rather than any failure on my part as a husband. The most satisfying part of the hearing was when Jennifer's attorney asked if there was any possibility of reconciliation. I was able to honestly say that I was in a committed relationship with someone else and had no interest in revisiting our marriage. Jennifer's face fell when she realized that I'd not only moved on emotionally but had found someone new who appreciated me. Karen had been incredibly supportive throughout the divorce process without being jealous or threatened by my past relationship. She understood that I needed time to process my feelings about Jennifer's betrayal and had given me space to heal without pressuring me to move faster than I was ready for. 6 months later, Karen and I moved in together and started building the kind of relationship I'd always wanted but hadn't known I deserved. We communicated openly about everything, supported each other's goals and interests, and never played games or used manipulation to get our needs met. The contrast between my relationship with Karen and my marriage to Jennifer was striking. With Karen, I never had to guess what she was thinking or feeling because she told me directly. When she had concerns about our relationship, she brought them up immediately rather than letting them fester and create distance between us. I heard through mutual friends that Jennifer had struggled significantly after our divorce. She'd had difficulty dating because word about her affair had spread through our social circle, and potential partners were wary of getting involved with someone who'd cheated on her husband. She'd also had to deal with professional consequences at work, where her relationship with Ryan had damaged her reputation. Ryan's marriage had survived his affair, but according to workplace gossip, his wife had insisted he find a new job and they'd move to a different city to start over. Jennifer had lost both her marriage and her affair partner, and was facing the reality that her choices had left her completely alone. I felt bad for Jennifer but recognized that she was dealing with the natural consequences of her decisions. She'd chosen to have an affair rather than addressing problems in our marriage directly, and then had tried to blame me for her choices when confronted with evidence of her betrayal. The experience taught me valuable lessons about recognizing manipulation and gaslighting in relationships. Jennifer's ability to make me doubt my own perceptions and blame myself for problems she was creating had been a form of emotional abuse that I hadn't recognized at the time. I also learned the importance of documenting concerning behaviors and trusting my instincts when something feels wrong in a relationship. If I hadn't kept records of my attempts to connect with Jennifer, I might have accepted her version of events and spent years believing I'd failed as a husband. Most importantly, I discovered what healthy communication looks like in a relationship. Karen's directness and honesty showed me that partners don't have to play guessing games or use manipulation to get their needs met. Real love involves being vulnerable and authentic with each other rather than creating drama and confusion. Looking back, I'm grateful that Jennifer's affair forced me to confront the problems in our marriage and ultimately led to our divorce. If she hadn't been caught cheating, I might have spent years trying to fix relationship problems that were actually caused by her emotional unavailability and dishonesty. The divorce was painful but necessary, and it opened the door for me to find someone who was genuinely compatible with me and committed to building a healthy relationship together. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened for your future happiness.